one season in Chicago, working alongside John Belushi and Bill Murray, John joined the newly formed Toronto Second City troupe. The cast featured some of the best and brightest comedians of the time, including Gilda Radner, Eugene Levy, and Dan Aykroyd.
I think like any kid growing up in Canada, to see a Canadian star, to see any star and be that close to it was just awe-inspiring. And John just had that magnetic charm and personality and warmth when you got the chance to talk to him.
Although Second City was an invaluable training ground, it didn't provide the recognition John was craving. In fact, one of the only times he was stopped on the street by a fan was merely a case of mistaken identity.
He asked some comment about what the kid liked most in the movie or what character, and he said, well, I like the one you did with Burt Reynolds. And I didn't really do one with Burt Reynolds. He goes, well, you are Dom DeLuise, aren't you? And John just said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am this kid. And he gave the kid the autograph, and away we went.
While Second City was barely making a go of it in Toronto, producer Andrew Alexander had bigger aspirations. Inspired by the success of Saturday Night Live, Alexander decided to take his cast of characters to television. And in 1977, SCTV was born.
On stage, John was funny, but about as funny as, at the time, we had Catherine O'Hara and Gene Levy and a lot of good actors. When we hit camera on SCTV, somehow the audience just gravitated towards John.
In 1979, SCTV lost its investors, and Alexander halted production to search for new partners. It was a blessing in disguise for John, who had just gotten married to his longtime girlfriend, Rosemary Hoborn. After feuding over salaries and budgets, he was looking for a fresh start and hoped to find it in Hollywood. Earlier that year, John had met Steven Spielberg at a Second City party in Los Angeles. Steven immediately took to John's warm personality and offered him a part in his upcoming wartime comedy, 1941. John thought this was the break he'd been waiting for, and was deeply disappointed when most of his scenes were edited out. After the birth of his daughter Jennifer Candy in 1980, John decided to return to Canada and bought a farm, complete with a trout pond, near the village of Queensville, Ontario.
Now look, I'm giving you one camera, one microphone, and you do the rest. That's impossible. Your last shot. I'll do it.
In 1983, Andrew Alexander found a new home for SCTV. To the surprise of the cast and crew, he announced the production was moving to the ITV studios in Edmonton, Alberta. John and Rose packed up the baby and headed for the prairies.
They certainly did focus when they were here. I mean, that's in fact, they said, well, what else is there to do? And it says, they basically focused on the work.
Although the Edmonton years are considered by many SCTV fans to be the best in the series, it wasn't long before the old arguments about money resurfaced. The show had been picked up by CBC and NBC, and the cast felt they weren't being paid fairly considering the show's success. John's frustrations came to a head one evening when the crew was fed what he believed to be a less than appropriate meal.
One day I had catered the crew with Swiss Chalet, and John was incredibly upset and offended that we were serving Swiss Chalet to the crew, probably for the third day in a row, if I remember rightly. And he punched a hole in one of those walls, and it was a complete, the drywall had to be completely repaired.
You know, if you were putting in a 22-hour day in the studio, and they brought in, chicken McNuggets as a kind of a dinner thing, that got him a little angry, because he expected steaks, spend a little extra on a dinner when people are putting in long days. In that sense, he really stood up for everybody.
As in his days growing up in East York, John became the father figure of SCTV, often waging war with the producers.
I do recall John had a bevy of girls, of Johnny LaRue's girls. If you recall, there was all these beautiful girls that would surround John. And then when we were shooting in Edmonton, John always wanted to bring them out first class. And I said, gee, John, I've seen a lot of beautiful girls here in Edmonton, why do we have to ship them all in from Toronto? So he said, no, they're my girls, and they have to come first class from Toronto. So ultimately he won that argument.
According to crew members, John was a great guy, but he was also earning a reputation as a heavy partier. By the early 80s, John weighed well over 250 pounds and was smoking more than a pack a day. It wasn't uncommon for him to arrive at work with a severe hangover.
I would think in my life now, and if he was still doing it, yeah, I would say that would be excessive, but we were all pretty young then, so that all seemed like that was a normal thing to do. So we just thought, John's partying again, and we never thought too much of it at the time.
After 2 years in Edmonton, the SCTV cast returned to Toronto, but the series ended soon after. It marked the end of an era for John and the beginning of a new career outside Canada.
John's your everyman, and that's the key. You know, everybody in the audience can relate to him, and everybody understands why he's in this predicament.